All right, Rabosai, good morning. Good morning. Let us begin by thanking all of our sponsors for this morning's share. To thank our TALMUD TORAH sponsors for the month of Kislev, Josh and Becca Friedman, for dedicating all the Shiurim and Joshos this month. Li'ilui Nishmas, Josh's father, Yisroel Yehuda, HaRav Chaim Rephael, for an aliyah for the Neshamas of those who died al Kiddush Hashem on Shmini Atzeres, for a safe return for all of our chayalim and hostages, and a complete refuah for all of those injured in Eretz Yisrael. Malka Esterson, in memory of their parents, Hinda Bas Henech Ephraim, Yitzchok Leib Ben Aaron Cohen, and Sarah Rachel Bas Baruch Avram. The Pepper family, in memory of their brother and uncle, Yosef Pepper, Yosef David Ben Yaakov Zichron Livracha. To thank our Week of Learning sponsors, Dr. Ed and Faith Wolf, in honor of the chassan of the wedding of their son Gideon and his marriage, Baruch Hashem, last night to Mali Himmelrich. Mazel Tov to the chassan and challah. They should be zocha to build the binyan adi ad ameh ve'esim shalim tovos. And to thank our Daf Yomi sponsor for today, Benjamin Fleischman, for an immediate and complete refuah sheleima. Plus, we updated the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, all of the Neshama have an aliyah. Those who need a refuah should have one together with Kol Chol Yisrael, and of course, there should be tremendous chizuk to our brothers and sisters in Eretz Yisrael, a safe return of all of our hostages, and hatzlacha for all of our precious soldiers. And of course, we as a shir dedicate our shir Li'ilui Nishmas, Master Sergeant Eliyahu Michal Harush, who died al Kiddush Hashem in Sderot. We hope that in the merit of our TALMUD TORAH, his Neshama will have an aliyah, and the family a Nechama. But also with that, thank you so much. With that, let us begin. So we have a very exciting daf ahead of us today. Really exciting daf ahead of us. Today's daf is Yud Ches 18, and we are picking up on Yud Zayin Amud Beis, 14 lines up from the bottom at the two dots, exactly where we left off yesterday. Amen. Okay, let us begin. Amarava. So if you remember again, our focus right now is really on the topic of tzroros. Or I shouldn't say, it's not solely on the focus of tzroros, but we've made this interesting distinction between damage done through the direct body of the animal, or direct contact with the body of the animal in some way, versus damage done from a secondary force. So the classic example of this is, when an animal goes ahead and is walking and tramples on a kli and breaks the kli. What is that? Regel, good. Versus an animal goes ahead and is walking, kicks up a pebble, the pebble goes and smashes the kli. That's tzroros. Chicken is going ahead and fluttering around and hits utensil with its wing. Regel. Chicken is fluttering around and the wind of the wings causes the utensil to fall over and break. Tzroros. That's our distinction so far. So the Gemara now continues in that distinction. Says us, "Oh, Rava, this is interesting. Kol shebezav tamei, kol shebezav tamei, but ezekim mishlam ezran." I will say, I know some of you are asking me. It's been such a long time since we've had any zav, right? It's a long time to go without zav, right? So Baruch Hashem, your tefillas have been answered. Here it is. Right? So as I said, the Gemara says as follows: this is actually an interesting relationship between tumah and nezikin. So between tumah, ritual impurity, and damages. So obviously like this. Any case where a zav would create tumah, ultimately again in nezek you would pay in damages you pay nezek shalim. Kol shav zav tar, any case where a zav you'd be tar, benezikim shalim chatzi nezek. By nezek, right, by damages you would pay half damages. Now what does that mean? The truth is actually a very simple relationship. When does a zav make something tamei? When there's direct contact. Now, I just want to give a caveat to that. We know this, that zav, it doesn't have to be actually like direct contact. For example, tumas medrus. What's tumas medrus? A zav could sit on a pile of cushions, and he sits on the top one, and what happens? The tumah spreads all the way down. But the idea is that the zav's body is in contact with the davar hanitma, with the item becoming tamei. So it's actually interesting. So any case where a zav would make something tamei, i.e. direct contact, a similar case by nezek, by damages, would generate an obligation for nezek shalim, complete damages. And any case where a zav would not convey tumah to something, for example, we'll say, if a zav were to pick up a utensil and he throws that utensil at someone, and the utensil hits another guy, right? So at the end of the day, there's no tumah that's conveyed. Chatzi nezek. We also call that tzroros. Kol Tzroros. Good. So we'll say interesting relationship. V'Rava. So that's very nice. But V'Rava Tzroros Asal Shmeinon. So I don't understand. Is Rava just coming to teach us the din of Tzroros? If that's the case, you could just leave out Zav. We know the halacha of Tzroros, right? We've already studied it. We've already established it. So if you're just coming to teach me Tzroros, why the need to reiterate this again? To which the Gemara says, no, that's not it. Lo, Rava Egla Mosheches Bekaron Kamash Malan. No, actually, Rava is coming to teach me a different case. What case is coming to teach me? The case of an ox that's pulling a wagon or pulling a cart. The Gemara says it's actually very interesting. Take a look at Rashi for just a moment. Rashi says it's actually right across. Egla Mosheches Bekaron Asla Shmeinan De Bezav Tamei Im Holcha Karon Shazav Ala Gabe Kelim Tmeim Mishum Medras Hazav. So it's actually interesting. So if a Zav, let's say a Zav is riding on a wagon, right? A Zav is riding on a wagon. So ultimately, again, and the Zav goes right, and there's utensils there as well, utensils underneath it. So ultimately, again, you could convey Tumah like that. So interestingly enough, same thing in Ezekiel Nami, Egla Shemashcha Bekaran Agabe Kelim Kegufahavi Velo Kitzroros. So it's actually interesting. What happens if an ox is pulling a wagon and the wagon runs over utensils? Not the ox. The wagon runs over utensils. So what is that? Is that a case of regel? Is that regel? Right? Or is that tzroros? Right? On one hand, is it regel because the ox is pulling the wagon? On the other, and therefore like the wagon kiviyachol is like attached to the body of the ox? Or maybe it's tzroros because at the end of the day, so it's not the body of the ox. So interestingly enough, so Rav is coming to teach us that just like a Zav who was on a wagon would convey Tumah, so too ultimately again when an ox pulls a wagon and the wagon does damage, that's considered to be damage done with the body of the ox. With the body of the ox, and therefore Nezek Shalim. Interesting. Tanya Kavase de Rava. There's a rice that supports Rava. Behema mu'edes l'shaber b'derech hilucha. An animal is considered to be mu'ad, to go ahead and damage items in the normal course of its walking. Ketzad. What's the example of this? Ketzad. Behema shenichnas alachatzer hanizak. If an animal enters into the domain of the damaged party, ve'zika b'kufa, and all b'derech hilucha, and it does damage with its body in the normal course of travel, or with its hair, or with its saddle, or with the load on its back, or with the bit in its mouth, the bell on its neck, or again a donkey is carrying a load, or a cow, right, or a calf is pulling a wagon, mishalim nezek shalim. Ultimately, again, you pay full damages. So both say, so that's what Rav is coming to teach us. So just like the zav on the wagon conveys tumah, so too again, if a cow or an ox, it doesn't really matter what the animal is pulling a wagon, and the wagon does damage, halacha l'maisa, that is nezek shalim. That is complete damages. So we'll say a very interesting idea. So whereas one might have thought that maybe that is tzroros, Kamashmala, no, that's actually called nezek begufa, actual damage with the body of the animal, and therefore halacha l'maisa, you pay nezek shalim. Incredible. Tan Rabbanon, Tarna Golem Shay Mechatatin Bechavel Deli, V'nifsaka Chavel V'nishbar Deli, Mishalim nezek shalim. So it's actually an interesting halacha as well. If you have chickens that are packing away at a rope, Bechavel Deli, and what happens? The rope breaks, and as a result, the bucket falls and it smashes. What's the halacha? Nezek shalim. Interesting. Nezek shalim, complete damages. So let's analyze this a little bit. So the Gemara says, by Rava, dar sa'akli, we're going to come back to this idea. And I will say, no, the truth is, the logic just seems to be, is that's called nezek begufa, even though, again, the chicken didn't go ahead and actually damage the utensil, but in other words, the rope is attached to the utensil, so damaging the rope obviously is going to lead to the breakage of the utensil. So the brisa seems to indicate that that's still called nezek begufo. That's still called direct damages with the body of the animal, and therefore nezek shalom. We're going to explore that case more. By Rava. Rava says as follows: Dar sa'alkli v'lo shibarto. What happens if the animal went ahead and trampled on the kli, listen to this, but didn't break it. And and then the kli rolled somewhere else, and then it broke. So we'll say, so here's the case. So the animal's going ahead and walking, goes ahead, and if you could imagine, knocks into the kli. Knocks into the kli, right? The kli doesn't break upon impact with the animal. Then the animal sends the kli flying, right? Literally, again, rolling. And then the animal hits a wall and smashes later on. So what's the halacha? What's the halacha? Is that called regel, or is that called sroros? What is it? Ma'u. So also listen to how profound this is. Basar me'ikara azlinon v'gufehu. Do we say, look, we look at how did all this start? Right? So we'll say, here's what I know. At the end of the day, what's the state of the utensil? State of the utensil, end of the day? Broken, right? So the shayla is, how do we look at the broken kite of the utensil? Do we look at how this started, and how did it start? Direct impact with the body of the animal, right? And therefore, again, that's called regel. So do we go basar me'ikara, and therefore, again, it should be nezek shalim? The gufehu, o dilma, basar taver mana azlina utsrosinu. Or maybe we look, no, not at the beginning of the process, but rather, again, at the moment that the utensil broke. At the moment that the utensil broke, right, who's not around? Who's not around? The animal. The animal. So we'll say, so maybe that's called the case of indirect damage, and therefore that's sroros. That's sroros. So we'll say, interesting. Also, we'll say it's also an interesting shayla, just like to contemplate, in general, when you look at something that occurs in life. So do we look? Well, we'll come back to it. In other words, do you look at the beginning basar me'ikara or basar sof? This is an ongoing machlokes throughout the Gemara in general in terms of how to look at processes in halacha. Do we look at the beginning, right? Do we look at the haskala, or ultimately again do we look at the end? So the Gemara goes weiter. Let's see. Tifshot lay meidorala. So also we can learn this out. We can answer this question based on Rabba. What did Rabba say? Amar Rabba. This is very interesting. Zorak li mirosh hagag uba achar mishiro makel. Listen to this case. I drop a utensil off a roof, right? And then what happens? Ruvain is batting practice, and as it's coming down, Ruvain hits the utensil with a bat. He smashes it. Now I will say, now understand, now what does that mean? So in other words, so he broke it before it hit the ground. So what's the halacha? So the Gemara says, pater. So Ruvain's pater. Why is Ruvain pater? Darminan le mana tavira tavar. So I will say, because at the end of the day, Ruvain broke a broken utensil. In other words, we don't view the utensil that Ruvain broke, we don't view it as him smashing a whole utensil. Because had Ruvain not been there, we'll say, what would have been the result? What would have happened? The utensil would have smashed. So essentially, he's already breaking a broken utensil. Most it's similar to. Okay, let's stay focused. So we'll say so much to do, so much to discuss. So therefore, he's viewed as breaking an already broken utensil, and therefore he's not chai. Now, both say, so based on that, so that's Rabba. So based on that, so halacha l'maisa, one would say that's what? One would say, says, so too, again, at the moment that the animal kicked the utensil, kicked it, it's broken. See, the whole chap is, once I drop a utensil off a roof, we'll say in halacha, what's the status of that utensil? What's the status? It's broken. Although we'll discuss that case in greater depth. But Lamaisa, for now, it's broken already. What do you see? That the moment you put the process in place, the moment you begin the process, which will result in a defined result, the result is considered as if it's already actualized. Which means that we go basar the haskala. We ultimately follow the beginning of the process, which would then mean that this should be a case of nezek shalim, complete damages, because this should just be a classic case of regel. To which the Gemara says, look, l'rabba pshitale, l'rav mebayale. And they both say, what is simple to one man is complex to another. So according to Rabba, Rabba holds that you follow the beginning of the process. So according to Rabba, just like he holds that when you drop the utensil off the roof, it's considered already as if it is broken. So too again, Rabba would say that when the animal kicks the utensil, right, and later on it's going to end up, not later on, but it's going to roll, hit the wall and smash, Rabba would say it's already considered as if it's damaged, right? And therefore, halacha l'maisa, that's regel. Rava wasn't sure. He wasn't sure what to do with this. So the Gemara goes weiter. Tashma, let's analyze it a bit more. Both say, Tashma, hidos ein muad. So hidos, which literally means hopping of a chicken, is not considered to be a muad activity. Now also, when we say it's not muad, that sounds like what it's saying is it's not regel. Because remember again, regel is muad from the beginning. Everything is muad from the beginning except except Karen. Right? So Hidus in a muad. Vish Omer is a muad. And some say, no, Hidus is muad. So the Gemara says, Hidus, what do you mean Hidus is not muad? Of course Hidus is muad. Hidus is regal. Chicken hopping around, I will say, is normal course of activities, normal activities of daily living. Ella, lav Hidus v'hitis. Rabbi most of them have noticed the following case of where the chicken hopped around, v'hitis. Now hitis, I will say, could either mean sent the utensil rolling, or kicked up some pebbles, or b'hakamifligi, the mar savar basar me kara as linon. So I'll say, so take a look at Rashi. I shouldn't leave actually that published Rashi says, last Rashi on the daf, hidos vehitis, shegilgal hakli barikidaso, l'makom achad v'nishbar. So we'll say, what's the case? The chicken is hopping around. As a result of its hopping, what happens? It sends the utensil rolling, and then the utensil breaks. So the Gemara says, it's a machlokes. What's the status? The mar savar basar me kara as linon. One opinion holds we look at the beginning of the process, and since the beginning of the process, right, the process was initiated through direct contact with the body of the chicken, therefore we view this as a case of regal. Umar savar basar tavar mana asli. Another opinion says no. We look at how the utensil broke, and therefore I will say when the utensil broke, it broke. The chicken was nowhere to be found, so to speak. Right, the utensil broke again of a secondary force against the wall, and therefore Allah said this is tzroros. I will say top of Yud Ches, top 18a. So the Gemara says, listen to this. Behetis tzroros, to which the Gemara says lo. That's not the machlokes. What's the machlokes here? Behetis tzroros. So I will say the case over here is not where the chicken was hopping, hit a utensil. The utensil went rolling, and the utensil hit against the wall and broke. That's not the case. What's the case? The chicken was hopping around, kicked up a pebble. The pebble went and smashed something else. So what's the machlokes? Top of Yud Ches, 18a, first line. Behitis tzroros, or beplukta de sumchas v'rabana kamiflagi. So we'll say we go back, classic machlokes. What's the machlokes over here? The machlokes is in tzroros. Right? Ultimately, again, what is the halach of tzroros? Machlokes, Rabbanon and Sumchus. The Sumchus v'Rabbanon kamiflagi. Good. So therefore, Rabbi said this case is not right. So remember, Rabbi said we're still hyper focused on our case. Our case is where the animal hits the utensil, doesn't break it, sends the utensil rolling or moving. The utensil then smashes against the wall and breaks. Right? And breaks. So what is that? Do we look at the beginning of the process? Rabbi said, and the beginning of the process, since there was direct contact between the kli and the animal itself, this is regal. Or no, since at the end of the day it wasn't the direct contact with the body of the animal that caused the cleat to break, but rather again it was a secondary force of the wall that is called tzroros. I will say, just want to point out, so notice how this case is fundamentally different than tzroros. I will say, what's the hallmark of a tzroros case? The hallmark of a tzroros case? Hallmark? No direct contact between the body of the animal and the utensil. That's the hallmark of a tzroros case, right? Remember again, the paradigmatic tzroros case, the animal's walking, kicks up a pebble, the pebble goes and does damage. At no point in the process is there ever direct contact between the body of the animal and the kli. But notice what's interesting about this case. This case, the shar is walking, right? Kicks the kli doesn't break. The kli then rolls, hits against the wall, and then breaks. So I will say, see, now you see the tension. On one hand, it was direct contact between the body of the animal and the kli, which causes the kli to break, right? Just not immediately, later on. On the other hand, it wasn't really the body of the animal that broke the kli. What broke the kli? The wall. So what is it? Is it regal or is it tzroros? See, you could feel the tension. You cut it with a knife, right? It's so intense. The Gemara says as follows. So we'll say, Yud Ches 18a, second line down. Tashma. Tarnagolin shayu mechatatin b'chavel dli. So what's another interesting case? So now you have chickens that are pecking at a rope that is attached to a bucket. And ultimately again, so the rope breaks, and ultimately again the bucket falls and breaks. What's the halacha? Mishalmin nezek shalim. Ultimately again, the owner of the chicken pays complete damages. So we'll say apparently this is a case of regal. Shma mina basar me'ikara aslinan. So I will say it's actually interesting is actually interesting. So the Gemara seems to indicate that halacha l'maisa, that this is a situation of, so basar meikaraz linon. So you see from here we go after the beginning. So remember again, here's another good case. The chicken is never having direct contact with the bucket, right? The chicken is pecking away at the rope, but yet pecking away at the rope, which results in the direct breakage of the bucket, seems to indicate to us that halacha l'maisa, we look at the beginning of the process. So Tirgum, the Gemara says, no, Tirgum achevel. Actually, when the Gemara says you pay nezek shalim, what's the nezek shalim on? Interestingly enough, the nezek shalim is not on the bucket. The nezek shalim is on the rope. You're going to pay complete damages because the chicken damaged the rope. That's what the nezek shalim is on. Very interesting. The Gemara says, what? V'hachevel mishunahu. I will say, generally, chickens peck at food. They don't peck at ropes. In that case, again, I will say, when the chicken pecks at the rope and snaps the rope, that's actually Karen. That's Karen. I will say, remember again, Karen is any type of abnormal aggressive behavior, any type of abnormal damaging behavior. So if it's not normal for a chicken to peck at a rope, and a chicken pecks at a rope and damages the rope, that's called Karen Tam. Right? That's called Karen. We'll say, what's halacha by Karen? What's halacha by Karen? Chasi nezek. So why paying nezek shalim? To which the Gemara says, no, the mos belisha. Now we're talking about a case, we'll say, where the rope is covered in dough. So we'll say, if the rope is covered in dough, then what? It's normal for the chicken to peck at it, because the chicken is not looking to damage the rope. What is the chicken doing? The chicken is looking for the dough. So therefore, that's considered to be a normal case. Like that would be either, again, it could be either shein or regel. It could be either shein or regel, but lamaisa, it's nezek shalim. Nezek shalim. One second. V'hanishbar dlikatani. Here's the problem. You're making this about the rope. That's not what the Brisa says. Right? They will say, what does the Brisa say? What does the Brisa say? The Brisa at the end of the day says that halacha l'maisa, that the bucket breaks, which indicates that the focus over here is not on the rope, right? The focus over here, halacha l'maisa, is on the kli, and it's saying that you're paying nezek shalim for the kli. To which the Gemara says, "Elo sumchas hi damer tzoros nezek shalim mishalim." Okay, interesting. So the Gemara says, one second. Still, this is not going to be a case of nezek begufo. This is going to be a case, ultimately, again, of sroros. In other words, the chicken pecking at the rope, snapping the rope, causing the bucket to fall and the bucket breaking. This is a case of sroros. Interesting, right? And the Gemara says, and it's reflective of the view of sumchos. What does sumchos hold? Sumchos holds the halacha l'maisa. The halacha l'maisa, sroros is nezek shalim. To which the Gemara says, sumchos, ema safe. Here's the problem. If it's sumchos, look at the end of the brisa. Nitas mimenu shever. V'nafal akli achad v'shivra. So let's listen to this. Here, make the case a little bit more interesting. Right? The chicken is pecking at the rope. Right? Pecking at the rope. The rope snaps. The bucket breaks. The bucket falls. The bucket breaks. And then what happens? A shard of the bucket goes and smashes against another utensil and breaks it. So then you have two broken utensils. Bucket number 1 and bucket number 2. So what does the Brisa say? The Brisa says, ultimately, again, for the first bucket, you pay complete damages. And for the second bucket, you pay chatzi nezek. We'll say, here's the problem. If it's sumchos, I will say, now remember, if you're going to taina, that both of those cases are tzroros. Both cases are tzroros. And the Brisa reflects the view of sumchos. If that's the case, what's the halacha? Nezek shalim for both buckets. Sumchos, mi istei chatzi nezek. Sumchos doesn't hold with chatzi nezek by tzroros in general, but say. Furthermore, v'chi tema, shiny le sumchos, bein nezek, bein ko, really take out the nezek, bein kocho, lekoach kocho. Maybe even sumchos, I will say, makes a distinction between damaged cause by primary force versus secondary force. In other words, I will say, there's tzroros, and then there's tzroros of tzroros. So maybe even sumchos, because remember, according to sumchos, you're going to say, here, the chicken snapped, the chicken packed at the rope snapped, the bucket fell. So that's tzroros, right? The chicken is not directly damaging the bucket, the chicken is damaging a secondary force, i.e. the rope. Okay, so sumchos is going to say, fine, you're going to be chayiv nezek shalim for tzroros. But now we'll say, now a shard of the first kli goes and breaks the second kli. Maybe Sumchos himself makes a distinction between what we'll call first degree tzroros and second degree tzroros, to which the Gemara says, Allah de by Rav Ashi, koach kocho l'sumchos, kikocho dami, olav kikocho dami. Rav Ashi asked the shaila. Rav Ashi wanted to know, according to sumchos, is there a distinction between, we'll call it first degree tzros as second degree tzros, what we call kocho, his direct force, versus the secondary force, to which the Gemara said, that's his tifshot lei delav kocho dami. You can learn from this price that according to sumchos, he holds that secondary force is not like primary force. Ela, so the fact that we don't answer that indicates to us that this is not sumchos. Ela lav rabbanani shmamina basar mei kara azlinan. Rather, Rabbi, you have to say that this is the view of the Rabbanon. And what do you see from here? You see from here, Rabbi, that we look at the beginning of the event. Rabbi, again, just understand what it means, basar mei kara. Basar mei kara means that since this entire event was triggered, how? Through direct contact with the body of the animal, we view this as a case of direct damage. That's what basar mei kara means. Whereas basar basof means we look at the end of the day when the kli breaks. Where is the animal? Right, somewhere else. He's not there. So therefore, maybe we look at this as tzros. Basar mei kara means we look at the beginning. This entire process was initiated by direct contact with the body of the animal. Again, and I will say, in contradistinction to a classic case of tzroros, where what, as you just mentioned before, where what? There's never any contact between the body of the animal and the utensil. That's the distinction over here. So we'll say, see from here that we go basar mei kara, and therefore we'll say, let's play out this case. Now this makes sense. So the chicken goes ahead and pecks at the rope. The rope snaps, and ultimately again the kli breaks. So we'll say, from the Rabbanan's perspective, this is called direct contact with the utensil. Since the rope was attached to the kli, it's almost as if there's one entity. And therefore halacha l'maisa, the chayiv for nezek shalim. And again, you would have to probably go with the case. Well, let's see. And therefore it's direct contact, and therefore nezek shalim. Enachinami, if the utensil were to break and a shard of utensil number 1 were to then smash into utensil number 2 and break it, that would be a case of tzroros. Beautiful. So Rabbi Abaye says it could also be that the case is the ka'azal mine. So I will say what Rabbi Abaye wants to do is as follows. He wants to say the truth is I have a different answer to this whole thing. That maybe the case Rabbi say is where halacha l'maisa, ultimately again the animal is pushing the utensil the entire time. Meaning, imagine the following situation. Imagine a chicken, or it doesn't really matter what the animal is, but imagine for a moment again Rabbi say that halacha l'maisa, the chicken is walking around, comes up against the utensil, and actively pushes the utensil. So the chicken is not stomping on it, not hopping on it, but it's pushing it. And what happens? As a result, ultimately, it pushes it against the wall, and then the utensil breaks. So I will say, here's what's interesting. One perhaps could have made the argument, is it the chicken that's breaking the utensil? Maybe yes, maybe no. It's the wall. But Lamai says, since it's the force of the chicken that is acting upon the utensil the entire time, that'll be a classic case of regel, right? Classic case of regel, and therefore chayiv nezek shalim. Good. So I will say that brings an end to the sugya. I will say, now how do we paskin? Because there's a lot of very interesting ideas over here. Specifically again, halacha l'maisa. What do you do about this case where ultimately again the force was ultimately initiated by the animal, but halacha l'maisa again the breakage of the utensil only comes sometime later on. So Rabbi says, so listen to this. Here's the halacha. Good. Here's the halacha. Let me show you 2 halachas. Here it is. The Rabbi says, Ramam Hilchos Niske Mammon Perek Beis Halacha Yudalit. Here it is. Listen to this. Chicken was pecking at the rope. V'nifsak achavel v'nishbar hadli, and ultimately again the rope broke and the utensil fell and smashed. Mishalim nezek shalim. Right, you pay full damages. So I'll say v'hu shniskalga hadli machmasan achdafa v'nishbar. So Rabbi say, interestingly enough, this is a case. So this happens just the chicken. This is a little bit more of a direct case because halacha l'maisa again the rope is directly attached to the utensil. And therefore, again, even though the chicken is not directly damaging the utensil, it's considered as if he is actually damaging the utensil because he's creating the force, the direct force that ultimately results in the damage of the utensil. So therefore, again, he's chayiv nezek shalim. That's considered to be a case of regal. A case of regal. Good, interesting. The Ram actually happens to bring in here that, by the way, if there is dough on the rope, you'd also chayiv nezek shalim on the rope. Okay, but we're not going to get into that. But I will say, but for our purposes, halacha l'maisa, we really go basar tchila. We really look at the beginning of the process. And if at the end of the day, there is direct contact between the animal itself and the kli, even though damage may be a little bit delayed, that's called regal. That's called regal. Assuming it's a normative act of animal daily living. That's called regal. So in this case over here, the animal pecks at the rope. That's considered to be normal in the eyes of halacha. Pecks in the rope. That's called regal. Right? And therefore, halacha l'maisa, the utensil breaks. Even though Ganabosai, there might be a delay. But l'maisa, again, it's called regal, and therefore nezek shalim. Fascinating halacha. Incredible. We'll say, incredible Moshe Haskell in that as well, which is sometimes, again, we make certain decisions, and those decisions result in a particular result. And the result is a negative one. And we like to comfort ourselves by saying, it wasn't me, right? I didn't directly do anything, but l'maisa, again, it happened. I would say, at the end of the day, you're chayiv not only for the actions you perform, but you're chayiv for the results of your actions as well. That's why a person has to live with a heightened sense of awareness. That's why what does Chazal say in Pirkei Avos? Ezu chacham, who is wise? Haroa es hanolad, one who sees what will be. So what does that mean? Chazal are telling us there's two sets of results in life. There's direct results or immediate results, and there are future results. So a lot of times in life, at least, right? A lot of times, like Baruch Hashem, at least the person contemplates immediate results, right? And that's, by the way, that's a level. What don't I contemplate? Secondary results. And I will say every single action has immediate results and secondary results. A lot of times we contemplate the first, we don't contemplate the latter. What does the Gemara say? Yechayev. Yechayev for the immediate and the secondary results that result from your actions. I will say how much we have to live with a heightened sense of awareness about what we do, about what we say, about how we act. And you can't claim, I didn't know, I didn't realize, I'm not responsible. Adam wa, the olam, a person has even a higher level of responsibility than the ox. I'm chayiv for the immediate results of my actions and the secondary results as well. Incredible. By Rava, I will say very exciting. By Rava. Chatzi nezek tzoros migufa mishali or aliyah mishali. So interesting. So I will say, now we've established, by the way, we passed like the Rabbanon. I think I mentioned that yesterday's year, but just say it again. We passed like the Rabbanon that halacha l'maisa tzoros is a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and therefore again, and that halacha l'Moshe Sinai says we will say that's what, even though tzoros really should be like regal, halacha l'maisa, and it is kind of like a derivative of regal, you only chayiv half damages. Fine. So here's the shaila. When you pay half damages, Rabbi was saying, the half damages like a classic case of damage, and therefore Rabbi was saying in general from damages, how do you pay? Min aliyah, from the, as they say, choicest. Right? Choicest property, right? I had to look it up. Choicest property, right? Do you pay from the best? Or Rabbi says, listen to this, remember, Rabbi say, where else do we find Chatzi Nezek? Where's Chatzi Nezek? Classic Chatzi Nezek is where? Keren Tam. Rabbi say, Keren Tam has a unique feature. What's the unique feature? When it comes to payment, your payment is kept at value of the damaging animal. So Rabbi says, so just to play this out, right? My shar that gores Ruvain's shar. Let's say again, total loss for Ruvain. Oh, and not even total loss. $1,000 of damage. So what's that? How much do I pay? How much do I owe? 500. Good. Not your question. Right? 500. Right? Half the damages. So let's say say that what? My ox, Nebuch, is on the cusp of retirement. Right? Not worth all that much. Right? So Lamaisa, my ox is only worth $300. So there's an interesting halacha that my liability is capped at the complete value of my ox. So therefore all I have to pay is $300. We'll see where the halacha comes from, but that's again, my liability is capped at the total value of the damage of my damaging animal. So it says, here's the shayla. Now that we've established you pay half damages, chatzi nezek for tzroros, so how do you evaluate that chatzi nezek? Is that like chatzi nezek by Karen? And therefore, again, the half damages is capped at the value of the damaging animal, or no? This chatzi nezek is like regular damages. It's like regular damages, and therefore you pay it min ha'aliyah, from the best property, and it's not capped. It's not capped at anything. You have to pay what you have to pay. Not only do you have to pay full liability, but you also have to pay from the best of your property. So that's the shayla. So let's analyze this. So the Gemara says, Megufa mishalim. So do we say, on one hand, maybe we pay only the value, right? Chatzi nezek is capped at the value of the damaging animal. Why? Because we'll say in general, the only other case of chatzi nezek is where, like we said before, where? Karen, right? And by Karen, by chatzi nezek of Karen, you don't have to pay minali, you don't have to pay from the best property, you only have to pay ultimately, again, up to the value of the damaging animal. Odilma, me'aliyah mishalim, telo ashkechan ke'arched mishalim migufei. Or maybe no, but at the end of the day, while it's true that tzroros has this unique carve out, halacha l'moshe, we said they have damages, but really, about say it's a case of regal. Really, tzroros is a case of regal, and we don't find any normative case that doesn't pay ultimately again min aliyah. So the Gemara says, or we don't find the regular case of damage that pays migufei, that pays based on the value of the damaging animal. So we'll say this is a shayla. This is shayla. So tashma, here we go. Hidos in a muad. So we'll say hopping of a chicken is not considered to be a muad behavior. The yishom harei is a muad. And some others say, no, it is muad. So we'll say, what? Hidos alaytcha, what are you talking about? Everyone agrees. We'll say hopping for a chicken, that's regal. That's normal daily activities for a chicken. What else does a chicken do? So the Gemara says, Elalav hidos vehitis. Rather, once you're talking about a case where the chicken is hopping around, and what does it do? It kicks up a pebble. Oh, tzroros. Ubahaka miflagi. And I will say, here's the machlokas. Man damar eina muad. The one who says ultimately again that it's not muad, it doesn't pay nezek shalim. Kasavra me'aliyah mishalim. Well, I'm sorry. So, I skipped, right? Sorry. Man damar eina muad, right? The one who says that it's not muad. Rabbi say kasavra migufa mishalim. Ultimately holds that halacha l'maisa, just like Karen, that's not muad. So too, if this case is not muad, again, it'll pay based on the value of the damaging chicken, and halacha l'maisa, liability is capped at the value of the damaging chicken. Uman damar muad, one who says it's muad, kasavra me aliyah mishalim, he'll hold that halacha l'maisa, you pay from the best property, just like any other case of damages. To which one says, lo, beplukta the sumchas v'rabbanan kamiflagi. No, that's not the case at all. The case also that we're talking about is a tzroros case. And if it's a tzroros case, what's the machlokes? Sumchas of Rabbanon. This is a classic tzroros case. Do you pay chatzi nezek, Rabbanon, halacha l'moshe misinai, or sumchas? Sumchas holds is not halacha l'moshe misinai. And therefore, the tzroros is nezek shalim. Fine. So we'll say, so that's not a raya. We're going to both say, keep your eye on the ball. What's our question? Let's assume right now that everyone is agreeing that tzroros is a halacha l'moshe misinai, and you pay chatzi nezek. So what's the shayla? How do you evaluate the half damages, the chatzi nezek payment? Do you say that it's like chatzi nezek of Karen, and therefore, because that's the paradigm of chatzi nezek, and therefore you pay half damages, but your half damages are capped at the value of the damaging animal? Or do you say that it's chatzi nezek, but the chatzi nezek ultimately again is like regular damages? In which case, halacha l'maisa, in which case what? Ultimately, you pay for the best property. That's the shayla. So again, we just tried to answer it. Did it work? Next, tashma. Interesting case here. Hakelev shenatal charara v'halach legadish. So also, we're actually going to talk about this case. We're going to talk about this case. Ultimately, again, in a couple of days. Hakelev shenatal charara. The dog takes a charara is a biscuit. And I will say now v'halach legadish, and it goes in and puts the biscuit down in a pile of wheat. And I will say now the unspoken part of this is, there's a coal, right? You're baking the biscuits on top of coals. The dog went and took the biscuit. There's a coal like underneath the biscuit. So what happens? So the dog takes the biscuit, puts it down on a pile of wheat, and then what happens? We'll say the coal obviously causes everything to catch fire. 2 dog gemaras within less than 3 days, both not ending well. Whatever. You interpret it how you want to interpret it. They'll say, listen to this. The dog eats the biscuit, and ultimately again ignites the pile of grain. So what's the halacha? Ala charara meshalim nezek shalim. So we'll say for the charara, for the biscuit, the owner of the dog has to pay nezek shalim, which makes sense. That's shame. What about Rabbi say for the coal? V'ala godish mishalim chatzi nezek. Rabbi say is interesting. For the burnt wheat, the owner only has to pay chatzi nezek. So Rabbi say, what's the reason? My timer la mishum dahavilit tzroros. So Rabbi say, because again, the pashtos, the coal will be tzroros. Rabbi say it's actually interesting. It's actually an interesting application of tzroros. Why? Because here, it's true, the dog didn't have direct contact with the coal itself, but it's interesting because the coal is stuck to the bottom of the biscuit, which is in the mouth of the dog. But again, we're going to talk about this case. So maybe the only reason you have to pay chatzi nezek for the damage to the pile of wheat is because Torah. So Tani Allah, and we learned about this. Mishalim chatzi nezek migufo. Oh, interesting. So you're going to go ahead and pay half nezek. We'll say, what do you pay half nezek from? Half nezek is going to be capped at the value of the dog itself. So what do you see from here? You see that chatzi nezek of tzroros is kind of treated like financially, like chatzi nezek of keren, and therefore the value of damages is capped at the total value of the damaging animal. The tizbara, well, let's analyze this a little bit. The tizbara, Rabbi Lazar, nezek shalom migufei mi ashkechan. So what's going to Rabbi Lazar? Where does he find the case ultimately again of chatzi nezek migufei? To which the Gemara says, "Look, go the shani baha gacheles." Rather, Rabbi say it must be that no, this isn't a case of tzroros. Rabbi say, what is this a case of? Keren. This is a case of keren. This, Rabbi say, I remember again, keren. We know halacha l'maisa is always considered to be an aberration. Right, that's why we call Mishuna Karen, right? Mishuna Karen Tam, B'chazar Nizak. So maybe that's the case over here, that this is a case of Karen. So because it's a case of Karen, therefore Allah Maswara, everybody agrees that by Karen Tam, what's the halacha? Chatzi Nezek. And Chatzi Nezek from what? Begufo. The value of the half damages is capped at the value of the damaging animal. Rabbi Lazar, Savalak, Rabbi Tarfal, the Amar, Mishuna Karen B'chatzar Nizak, Nezek Mishuna Karen B'chatzar Nizak, Nezek Shalim Mishalim. So I'll say, maybe Rabbi Tarfal, so ultimately Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Tarfal, Rabbi Tarfal is of the opinion that Allah Chalamaysa, for Karen Tam, that occurs in the property of the damaged party, you pay Nezek Shalim. Pay Nezek Shalim. Velohi. That's not going to say the idea. My time. It's not a good interpretation. My time. A mokum is like Rabbi Tarfon. Why are you setting this up like Rabbi Tarfon? Mishum Nezek Shalim. Because it's a case of Nezek Shalim. Rabbi Lazar, Savar Kisumchos, you could still, once I set this up as a case of Tzroros, so when Tzroros, Nezek Shalim Mishalim, for Savar Rabbi Yehuda da Amar, Sad Tambus ben Kamma Omede. So we'll say, you could set this case up utilizing two principles. Number one, you don't have to switch over to a case of Keren. You could still assume that this is a case of Tzroros. But if it's Tzroros, then how can you be paying Nezek Shalim? Very simple, it's like Sumchos. And I will say also you can set it up like Rabbi Yehuda, because we're going to talk about this more later on. Rabbi Yehuda holds that ultimately, it's actually interesting, when an animal transitions from a tam to a muad, does it assume a totally new identity? Or ultimately, again, do aspects of the tam identity follow along with it? That's the fundamental shaila. So we're going to talk about the application. Now we're not going to get into that now. Rabbi Yehuda holds that halacha l'maisa, an animal takes its tamkite with it, even when it becomes a muad. So the Gemara says, listen to this, v'chikatani migufo atzad tamus. And ultimately, again, when it says you pay me gufa, Rabbi say, that's not referring to the total final damages. Rather what that's referring to is the tam aspect of the damages. More about that later on. I'm going to have Sabri Ravashi, the Ravina. Amar Neshama say Rabbi Yehuda betam v'nas muad. So I'll say ultimately again, when did Rabbi Yehuda say this? When it's a tam and it becomes a muad. But muad mitchilaso. But I will say in the case of an animal or of damages, we're talking about the type of damage for which an animal is muad from the beginning. We'll say, remember again, it's important to reinforce. The only time we ever have this constant distinction between tam and muad is where? By keren. In all other cases, the animal is muad mitchila. Amud Bezer will say, mishamisli. Does he hold this way? Ki Kamma Rabbi Lazar nezek shalim. Rather, Rabbi say, when does Rabbi Lazar hold that there's a case of nezek shalim? Kigon di'iyayit. We're talking about a case ultimately again where the animal becomes a muad. Watch this. Rabbi say, here it is. This is incredible. So we'll say, so now, remember, I just want to point out, pause here for just a second. We're still hyper focused on our previous question. What's our previous question? Assuming that we pass like the Rabbanon, that tzroros are chatzim nezek. What's our shaila? What's the basis of repayment for chatzim nezek of tzroros? Does Chatzi Nezek of Tzoros, is it like Chatzi Nezek of Karen? And just like Karen pays Chatzi Nezek half damages, but half damages are capped at the value of the damaging animal? Or no, even though Tzoros is Chatzi Nezek, but it's Chatzi Nezek that's like Regel, or that's like Shane, meaning what? It's true you only have to pay half, but the valuation of the damages is like any other case of normative damage, i.e. min aliyah, from the best of the property. That's the shayla. So I'll say, now watch this. In the midst of trying to solve that question, the Gemara comes up with another question. If the Gemara says second line, 18b, third line, now mar savar, yesh adlat tzoros, umar savar eina adlat tzoros. Wow. The Gemara says another machlokes. Can an animal become muad when it comes to tzoros? Isn't that fascinating? Can an animal become a muad when it comes to tzoros or not? So the Gemara says, maybe that's machlokes. Good, hold that. Bless you. Oh, eina adlat tzoros. So we'll say, but 1 second, Rava asked that question. Can you become a muad? We'll say, even if you paskin, that tzoros ultimately again are chatzi nezek, is there such a concept that an animal becomes a muad for tzoros? So the Gemara says, Rava asked the shayla, yesh adlat tzoros, eina adlat tzoros. We'll actually delve more into this later on. Either Rabbanon, eina adlat tzoros. According to the Rabbanon, you can't become a muad for tzoros. Either Rabbi Elazar, yesh ha'adlat tzoros. According to Rabbi Elazar, you can become a muad for tzoros. Rava says, Kimi baile liditi aliba de Rabbanon, de pligi ale de sumchos. My shaila is, according to the Rabbanon, ultimately again who disagree with sumchos. Disagree in what the Rabbi say? Because remember again, this is back to the fundamental tzoros discussion. Aval hacha, bein the Rabbanon, bein the Rabbi Elazar, ki sumchos sfira lehu, the amar tzoros nezek shalim mishalim. Rather, Rabbi say, you have to say in this version of the discussion, everyone is holding like sumchos, namely that tzoros will be nezek shalim. The time of my amar Rabbanon chasi nezek. Ultimately, again, so why would the Rabbanon say chasi nezek? I will say even according to sumchos, the shani v'lo yayid. Ultimately, was because you'd have to say that it's a case of keren. It's a case of keren, not a case of tzoros, and it's keren tam, and ultimately that's why it's going to be chasi nezek. Ubeplugta the Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanon kamiflagi. And I will say, what's the machlokes? The machlokes is what's the status? Watch this of keren tam birshus hanis. We had this in last week's daf. What happens when keren is done in the domain of the damaged party? The Rabbanon hold chatzi nezek. Rabbi Tarfon holds nezek shalim. Say Eimer Desham, say the Rabbi Tarfon nezek shalim miguf, nezek shalim miguf. I'm sorry. Eimer Desham say Rabbi Tarfon nezek shalim migufo mishamisle. So what's according to Rabbi Tarfon? I know that Allah Lamaisa keren tam in the reshus of the nizak pays complete damages. How do I know that means that he pays in migufo? Migufo mishamisle. In mehecha maisi mikaren mirshus harabim. Ultimately, so where does he learn it out? So interestingly enough, even though Rabbi Tarfon holds, it's actually very interesting. Even though Rabbi Tarfon holds that keren birshus hanizak pays nezek shalim, he holds that nezek shalim is capped at the damage, at the value of the damaging animal. Where does he know that from? From keren in rishus harabim. He will say keren in rishus harabim will only pay half damages, and ultimately again it pays half damages, but it pays migufo. So therefore, Rabbi Tarfon will say that keren b'shus hanizak, even though it pays full damages, but l'maisa it's only going to pay migufo. So we should 1 second. Dayo lava min adin liyos kinidon. Whoa! If you're learning out keren of in rishus hanizak from keren in rishus harabim, the Rabbi says the concept of dayo. What does dayo say? Dayo says that when you learn something out from a source, the derived item can't be any stronger than the source item. So watch this. So Rabbi Tarfon, if you're going to tell me that keren birshus hanizak pays migufo, is capped at the value of the damaging animal, and you're learning that out from keren in rishus harabim, then what? We should say, just like keren in rishus harabim, I will say is only what? Chatzi nezek. So too keren in rishus harabim, just like keren in rishus harabim is only chatzi nezek, so too keren in rishus hanizak should also only be chatzi nezek. Okay, Rabbi Tarfon, less le dayo. Maybe Rabbi Tarfon doesn't know the dayo. Ki less le dayo hecha de mifrach kal v'chomer. Hecha de lo mifrach kal v'chomer is le dayo. So I will say that's only true ultimately when there's a pircha. But if there's not a pircha, ultimately again he does hold of dayo. So I will say, so fine. So I will say, so that kind of pauses the sugya over here. So the problem we have right now is there does not seem to be a clear resolution, and this is an issue. So I will say, so before we go on, because now the Gemara is about to transition into the discussion about can you become a muad for tzroros. So before we get to that, we have this incredible question that's still out there. What's the question? I will say, what's the question? Let's go with what we've established. So I'll say, so first of all, we got a lot of good stuff under our belt today. Number one, the chicken that pecks, the rope, and ultimately rope breaks, and the kli smashes. What's the halacha? Yechayiv nezek shalim. Right? Why? Because we go basar haschala. We go after the beginning, and as long as in the beginning there was direct contact between the animal and the kli, which is considered the direct animal when it comes in contact with the rope that is attached to the kli, it's called the kli. Therefore, again, halacha l'maaseh yechayiv. As long as there's initial contact, yechayiv nezek shalim. Good. That's number one. I will say, so now question number 2 for today was, we passing in like the Rabbana, namely, sroros chatzi nesek. So we'll say, what's the shaila? So again, half damages for sroros. How do we know that? Half damage sroros, where does that come from? Halacha l'Moshe Misinai. What's the shaila? What's the matter of repayment? Do we say that halacha l'Moshe says half damages, and it's like half damages of Karen, namely, just like half damages of Karen is capped at the value of the damaging animal, so to tzroros, same model, half damages capped at the value of the damaging animal, or no. Or maybe it's considered to be just like a regular act of damages, just like a regular regel, just like a regular shane, and therefore, although you only have to pay 50% of the damages, you have to pay 50% from what? Min aliyah, from the best property. Here it is. Rabam, Hilchos Niskemon, Parak Beis Halacha Gimel. Here we go. Called Tolda Ke'av Shalach Chutz Mitzros. Someone has some good. So listen to this. Shafapi. Now, this is actually interesting. We'll say, just to point out, Sroros is a Tolda of Regel. Right? Sroros is a Tolda of Regel. Now, in general, right, which makes sense, right? Because remember, what's Regel? Regel is any damage done in the activities of daily living, right? What's Sroros? Sroros is you've generated a force in an activity of daily living that results ultimately in the damage of the utensil. So now watch this. In general, we'll say, what's the halacha when it comes to avos and toldos? What's the relationship between avos and toldos and halacha? Right? They're the same. Remember, Baba Kamma, Beis Amud Aleph. Baba Kamma, Beis Amud Aleph. Avos and toldos, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. So don't give me that, right? First of all, it's 2.5 weeks ago, right? It's like, so I say, so avos and toldos, exactly the same. With one exception, which is, Rambam says, sroros. Sroros is the exception. Even though sroros is a tolda of regel, it's treated differently. Shavap, we should tell this regel name, or part of which is Ram, Kregel, Vim, which is good, fine. Vim, Hiziko, Birshus, so sroros is an exception, right? Even though sroros is a tolda of regel, it is treated differently than regel. That's the halacha, treated differently than regel. Now, watch this. The Rambam writes, Vim, Hiziko, Birshus, therefore, if an animal does sroros damage, Mishalim min hayofesh shebenechasav keregel shehu av afa pikein eno mishalim ela chatzi nezek. Here it is. So the Rambam says halach l'maisa sroros is a tolda of regel. It happens to be there's a unique halacha by sroros that you only have to pay chatzi nezek. That's halacha Moshe Misinai. But because it is a tolda of regel, therefore it has the same payment halachas as regel itself. And therefore, halacha l'maisa pays chatzi nezek, but pays it min aliyah, from the best property. So we'll say that's how we pass halacha l'maisa. Tzroros will pay chatzi nezek, but that chatzi nezek ultimately again only comes from min hayafesh b'nechasav, what we call min aliyah, from the best property, just like regel damage. And we'll say shkoyach. We'll stop over for today. A packed daf, and we'll pick up at the gufa about whether or not there is a burn could become muad for tzroros. We'll tomorrow sugya shkoyach. All right, Chevra Zoom, have a great day, everyone. Jack, have a great day. Thank you, sir.